behaviors. I don't care if the child's hitting, biting, throwing, kicking, scratching, dropping the floor, whether it's for attention, escape, avoidance, access to tangibles, we're going to respond the same way no matter what. We always intervened reactively. We waited for that tantrum to happen, and then we jumped in. It was always focused on that behavior reduction. How do we make those negative behaviors go away? And we were always looking at how do we fix it now? How do we change it today? The new way of intervening is really looking at matching the intervention to the purpose of the behavior. So how I respond to hitting for attention is going to be very different than how I respond for hitting to escape a demand. We want the intervention to be proactive. A lot of my friends were in the military, and they always taught me, the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in wartime. For us, the more effort we put into intervention, the less we get beat up or the less we see those maladaptive behaviors. We want to be proactive. We want to focus on teaching those new skills. And what we really want isn't just that quick fix, but that long-term fix. It seemed like almost everyone in here was looking at preschool. It's not so much what does the behavior look like when they're 2, what does the behavior look like when they're 3, it's what's the behavior look like when they're 12, 15, 22. You know, we said I have a 40-year-old brother on the autism spectrum. Some of those little slaps when he was 2 or 3, no big deal. Those Mike Tyson right hooks when he's 40 are a big deal. So we really want to look at what does the behavior look like long term. So again, that old school was always punish the student or get rid of the student. Punish the student, get rid of the student. And unfortunately, we still do see a lot of that. I get calls all the time from preschool saying, or from a family saying, my preschool kicked me out. We're either going to punishment or getting rid of. What we really want to be looking at is how do we change our expectations? How do we change teacher and peer tolerance? How do we use reinforcement to change that behavior? How do we use planned ignoring if it's attention-seeking behavior? Do we need to change the layout of the room or the peers in the room? Do we have to teach the child's peers how to ignore that behavior? Do we need to change the classroom? How are we going to get the parents on board? How are we going to change the curriculum? That's what we want to look at more than just punishing and getting rid of. So what does it mean when we shift proactively? We really have to think about appropriate behavior, something that needs to be taught, not expected. I saw some teachers of 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. These kids are coming to school not knowing the appropriate behaviors. We need to teach them what those behaviors are. We need to think about examining the events that precede the behavior rather than just the consequences. It's not always, I put the child in timeout, I took away his favorite toy. We want to look at, well, the teacher shifted their attention to someone else right before the child hit. What happened before the behavior? We need to know that we can have an effect on behavior when it's not happening. So if we reinforce the child for the appropriate behaviors when the behavior is not happening, they're more likely not to exhibit those negative behaviors. And we really need to focus on the function, not what the behavior itself looks like. So there are 4 functions of behavior, and every child or adult's behavior serves one of these 4 functions. Attention, I want you to respond to me. For our teachers of younger kids or our teachers of ESE students, we're not always differentiating positive and negative attention. Attention is attention. So high five, I love the way you shared with your friend, or the finger wag, don't you ever do that again as I'm lecturing you for 45 seconds. There's no difference. It's still attention. Then we have escape. I don't want to do what you're telling me to do. You tell the child to put away their favorite toy and line up, and they drop to the floor screaming. You say it's time for mifgosh or circle time, and they run away. Those are those escape avoidance behaviors. Then we have access to tangible. I want that toy, I want that food, I want that game, I want that whatever it is. Or there's sensory. I like the way this feels. I'm chewing my fingernails. I'm twirling my hair. I'm chewing on the pen cap. I'm scratching a bug bite. That's that sensory seeking behavior. I've always loved this slide, and it's really sad to me, but if a child doesn't know how to read, what do? We obviously teach them. If a child doesn't know how to swim, do we throw them in the deep end and hope for the best? Of course, we teach them how to swim. If a child doesn't know how to multiply, we teach. If someone doesn't know how to drive, We teach. But if a child doesn't know how to behave, what do? We should be filling that in with we teach, but more often than not, our teachers and our parents are filling that in with we punish. And why isn't it as automatic to teach kids behavior as it is to teach everything else? So what's our job as teachers and professionals? Figure out what the student's getting out of the challenging behavior. What's the payoff? Are they getting attention? Are they escaping a demand? Are they getting access to a toy? Is it sensory? Figure out what they should be doing instead. Well, instead of throwing for attention, they should be saying, hey, come play with me, or let's play together, or can I have a hug? If they're throwing to escape, instead of throwing, they should be saying, I need a break, or can I have help? We should be looking at how we can change the environment to make the child more successful and figure out what we need to teach them for them to be successful. So we've really shifted to a more PBS, positive behavior support approach. And this is an approach for changing a student's behavior. And it's based on humanistic values and research. It's more in line with what we as JCCs are really looking to do. We're developing an understanding of why the individual has those challenging behaviors and teaching the student new replacement behaviors. It's a holistic approach that considers all of the factors that impact the student, family, and the student's behavior. So when we look at behavior in isolation, well, he's hitting for attention. But if we don't look at the big picture, well, mom and dad are getting divorced and he hasn't seen dad in a couple weeks, or dad just took a new job that requires traveling, or mom's taking care of a sick relative and not home as much. If we're not looking at the family as a whole, we're never going to change that child's behavior. So one of my previous jobs was providing behavioral support to all of Broward County, the Fort Lauderdale area's preschool classrooms for kids with special needs. And I had one teacher who told me, John, you're going to be so happy when you come see my room. I need 8 individual behavior plans. You're going to be in heaven. And I was thinking one of two things. Either you have the most challenging classroom in the history of the world, or you have no classroom management, because you shouldn't have 8 kids who need such in-depth behavior plans. So if we know it's a classroom issue and we just need to fix the overall structure of the room, maybe we're seeing those behaviors during too much downtime. One of my biggest pet peeves is Fun Friday. And I don't know if you guys are doing that in your classrooms. And the teachers just can't wait for that day when we're going to pop a movie on, we're going to sing some songs, we're going to have pizza. And all of a sudden, Fun Friday turns into disaster because all that downtime leads to more behaviors. Or someone comes in and looks at your room and sees that a lot of elements are missing. You know, each program has different elements they want in their rooms, but a schedule should be one of those elements. Behavior management system should be one of those elements. A structural, logical flow to your day, clear where one activity starts and ends. All rooms should have those things in place. If you're missing those, that's a classroom issue, not a child issue. We're seeing an issue with child-teacher interaction. So every time a certain child sees you, they run the other way. That's not a behavior plan issue. That's a classroom issue. Or you have 5 or 6 kids falling apart during one activity. So my circle time when I was a teacher was not my greatest thing. My singing voice is awful. My poor 7-month-old runs the other way when I start singing. If every time during circle half your class is falling apart, it's probably an issue with circle time, not with your individual students. We have to look at how we can adjust circle time to make our kids more successful. Signs that it is an individual child thing: the behavior is severe and could cause harm to themselves or others. Biting, severe aggression, self-injurious behavior in the form of headbanging, biting themselves, those types of things. That's signs for more individualized behavior intervention. You have all the classroom indicators in place and you're still seeing challenging behavior. That's a let's look at the individual situation. Or you've tried a bunch of different proactive strategies and you're still seeing those behaviors, then it's a let's jump to more individualized sessions. So one of the first things you should do is assess reinforcers for instruction. Every child has reinforcers. They have motivators. Sometimes they're super obvious. Every time the child walks into your room, he runs to the train set. Trains are probably a great reinforcer. Sometimes they're not so obvious. When I was a behavior analyst at a school, I had a teacher who told me, John, this kid does not have a reinforcer. And I was like, you're wrong. You know that every kid has a reinforcer. She's like, okay, come to my room and find the child's reinforcer. So I sat in her room for 3 days and I was like, oh my God, she's right. This kid doesn't have a reinforcer. On the third day, she was working on gross motor imitation with the child. Clap hands, stomp feet, touch head. When she said, clap your hands, the child clapped her hands. She went to write a plus for the child clapping hands. She dropped her pen. She bent down to pick up her pen. Her hair flew over her head. The child started cracking up. So I told the teacher to start, waving her hair in the wind again. She did. The child cracked up. I said, let me try. I bent over. I shook my head. I have no hair. Child did nothing. I had her do it again, started cracking up. That child's reinforcer was hair blowing in the wind. That was the starting point. We had to pair it with something easier to use as a reinforcer, but every child has a reinforcer. Sometimes they're obvious, sometimes they're really hard to find. When we're looking at behavior problem solving, the first thing we want to do is define and prioritize the target behaviors. For teachers in the room, if you pick 20 behaviors to start on at one time, you're going to fail. Pick 1 or 2 behaviors. What are the priority behaviors? Aggression, running out of the classroom, self-injurious behaviors. Those are your priorities, and then work your way down to less dangerous behaviors. Then we're going to gather some information. If you've never taken ABC data before, I'll send Mark some ABC data sheets to share with you as well. We're going to get into what that is in a little while. You're going to take those ABCs to figure out, number 3, why the child's doing what they're doing. Are they doing it for attention? Are they doing it for escape? Are they doing it for access to toys or sensory? Or are they doing it for a combination of all of those? Then we're going to develop that plan, and then we're going to implement and see if it's working or not. So when you're prioritizing, again, start with that aggression, self-injury, eloping, running away from the room. Then we move to those disruptive behaviors, screaming, crying, disrobing. And then we end with those distracting behaviors, whining, hand flapping, self-stimming, self-talk. But we're going to start with the dangerous and move down. So when we're gathering information, you want your data collection to give you enough information that it's accurate, but easy enough for you to use. If you know your child hits for attention, you don't want to write down the ABCs every time. Maybe you wear a tally clicker and you click every time the child hits. And at the end of the day, you look and say it was 32 times. And that's your data for the day. And you want to take it at different times of the day. If you always take data from 9 to 10 and the child's great because he's well rested, but you're missing that 1 to 3 when they're starting to get really tired and starting to fall apart, you're missing the bigger picture. You want to take that data throughout the day. So we're going to look at set events, antecedent behavior, and consequences. So set events don't make a behavior happen, but they make a behavior more likely to occur. They're not the same as the antecedent, and it might include illness, not sleeping well, fight with a friend or spouse, not having your coffee in the morning. So up until recently, every morning I hopped on I-95 and I drove to work. And every morning someone would cut me off. And I would wave and say, thank you for almost killing me. And I would just keep going about my day. But if I'm feeling sick or haven't had my coffee that morning, that's the set event. And when someone cuts me off, which is the antecedent, instead of waving, which was my behavior when I'm nice and calm, because I didn't sleep the night before and didn't have coffee, maybe I'm flashing my brights, I'm honking my horn, maybe a finger went up that shouldn't have gone up. The antecedent was getting cut off, but not sleeping, getting sick, not having my coffee was the set event that made me more likely to explode. Right now, we all have major set events going on in our lives. So if you went to Publix or whatever your grocery store is, and someone cut you off down the paper goods aisle, every other time that happens, you're probably fine with it. But now that you're so nervous about not having toilet paper, you might jump into that person's cart and try to strangle them, whatever it is. You're reacting differently than you normally would because the set event. Think about how it affects your kids. If you have a child whose grandmother just passed away and they came to school and you told them it's time to put away their favorite toy and they fall apart, being told to clean up their favorite toy is the antecedent. but grandma passing away is that big setting event impacting their behavior. Antecedents. What happened before the challenging behavior occurs? It might be told to go to work time. Teacher turned away to talk to another student and lost the attention. The class got too noisy and our children with special needs are maybe oversensitive to noise. A peer teased them, got tagged in a game and were out. Those are the antecedents. Behavior, that's that hitting, throwing, scratching, crying, dropping to the floor. And Mark, if you can jump in as people start to type, what are some of the behaviors that you guys see in your classrooms?
I'm looking at the chat for you to post some things about kids. Pulling hair, biting.
So we got pulling hair, we have biting.
Throwing toys, hitting other children, screaming, laughing when hitting, headbutting, trashing, dumping shelves, throwing shoes, spitting, scratching, somebody, elopement, slapping a child.
Elopement, running away from the classroom.
Running, throwing furniture, screaming, hiding from the group when he gets frustrated, biting, pushing, ignoring.
So we're all seeing some pretty intense behaviors and some pretty similar behaviors. And someone said throwing furniture, and I always laugh. People always are like, oh, but you're working with preschoolers. How much damage can they do? And I'm like, I see a 3-year-old pick up a full table and throw it across the room when they're really upset. Our little guys can do some damage as well. Those are all behaviors. What's not a behavior is tantruming. I can't observe tantruming. I can observe crying. I can observe throwing. I can observe eloping if I can keep up with the child. I can observe biting. I can't observe tantruming. The behaviors, throwing, dropping the floor, and crying can make up a tantrum. But when you're talking about behavior, please don't tell a parent your child tantrums. Tell them the specific behaviors that you're seeing. And then there are consequences. That's the C of ABC. It's what happens right after the behavior. It might be reinforcing, it might be punishing, or it might be neutral. What does the individual get from the behavior? So, and I don't think she's here today, although I sent her the link. I always make fun of my mom in this situation. So my mother is one of the leading experts in the field of autism. She is a brilliant, brilliant special educator. She could not do it with my brother. And every time the phone would ring when she'd be in the playroom with him, she would go, she'd answer the phone, and he would start screaming and banging his head. And she would hang up the phone, she would run back to him, and she would start talking to him. She'd be like, I just don't understand why you bang your head every time I leave the room. And we would always laugh because what she was missing is what Mikey got out of that behavior, which was my mom's undivided attention. So that consequence is really, what is the child getting from the behavior? They're getting something. No child does something that doesn't have a payoff. It doesn't have to be intentional. I know you guys, since you're here on a Wednesday during this coronavirus scare, you're obviously very motivated teachers. I'm sure you hand in your lesson plans on time every week. I'm sure your lesson plan never says, I'm going to teach Jimmy how to bang his head today. But what happens is the first time Jimmy bangs his head, you get very nervous and you run over and pick him up to ask if he's okay. And now Jimmy learned that banging his head gets all sorts of attention. We don't purposely teach negative behavior, but us parents, people in the community are teaching negative behavior on a daily basis. And when we say consequence, it's not the same as discipline. It's not punishment. So if you say, what day is today? And a child says Wednesday, and you say, awesome, high five, the high five is the consequence in that situation. So again, looking at those setting events, illness, poor night's sleep, for kids who aren't yet talking, not having a communication system, not having any choices in their days, an unpredictable schedule. Those are all setting events that are going to affect the ABCs in behavior. So when we look at behavior, we're going to look at it in 3 different ways. What are we going to do to prevent behavior? And that should be 80% of what you do. How are we going to use token boards, first in systems, visual schedules, self-regulation systems? That's how we're going to prevent those behaviors. What we're going to teach them to replace the behavior, We can never take away a behavior without replacing it with something else. If the child's hitting for attention, we have to take away the hitting, but replace it with a way for them to request attention. And then how we're going to respond, how we're going to prevent reinforcing that problem behavior, how we're going to reinforce the appropriate behaviors, and do we need a crisis plan for some of these behaviors? So how we might prevent some SEND events? Well, a child not sleeping, maybe coming to school a little later, not feeling well, maybe allowing a nap. I had a child who was, having some pretty bad allergy issues a couple of weeks ago, and they were coming in bad headaches, bad sinus pressure every day. And we would let them sleep from 9 to 9:30. They would wake up and they were amazing the rest of the day. But if I started pushing them at 9, I would lose them all day. If they're in a bad mood, maybe increasing those fun preferred activities. If they've had behaviors already during the day, maybe some extra breaks or doing some more maintenance tasks, stuff they're already good at. If their routine is off, when we come back to school, hopefully very soon, all of our kids' routine is going to be very off. We want to increase that attention, increase that love, comfort them during that throw off and routine. We want to build on what works. We want to look at what can be done to help the child not respond to the trigger that has them having the challenging behaviors. So if we know a child is showing these negative behaviors for attention, showering them with attention proactively is going to make them less likely to have those negative behaviors. If we know the child's having these aggressive behaviors to escape a demand, using behavioral momentum, which we talk about soon, using first then, work break type schedules are going to make them more successful. Do we have to have some pre-activity prep? I love when I watch a room and a teacher, says, all right, my 3 friends, let's go to art. And the kids run in 3 different directions. And the teacher takes 5 minutes to catch their friends, get them to the art table. And they sit down at the art table, finally ready to go. And there's nothing on the table. And now they get up, they walk over to the counter to get art for the day. And by the time they come back, the 3 kids are gone again. Having the activity ready to go makes life so much easier. When I was a teacher, I had a big bin for each lesson in the day. In the bin were all the materials for the lesson. On the top of the bin were the visuals that went with the lesson, because I worked with a special needs population that needed a lot of visuals. And I would put those bins where the activity was happening. So when I got there or my paraprofessionals got there, all the materials were already there, prepared to go for the day. Visual supports for receptive language. Having the pictures for stand up, sit down, come here, to pair with it so you're not repeating yourself over and over are amazing. I think every preschool and every class should have a visual schedule. It doesn't need to be an individualized board maker schedule like we see in our special needs classrooms, but some sort of visual schedule. And transition warnings. 5 more minutes and we're going to clean up to go outside. 3 more minutes and we're going to clean up. 1 more minute, when that timer goes beep, beep, we're going to transition. You want to give those warnings. Provide choice proactively. So I married an amazing woman who's also in this field, and she uses these choices on me all the time to stop my negative behaviors. So if we have friends coming over, she'll say, John, the house needs to be clean. Do you want to vacuum and sweep, or do you want to clean the bathrooms? I pick vacuum and sweeping every time, and I think I'm winning this. Ha ha ha, silly Katie, I got out of cleaning the bathroom. But what Katie's saying is, ha ha ha, silly John, I got him to do 50% of the work with no behaviors. So given those choices, but they're appropriate choices, do you want to go to art or do you want to go to sensory? Do you want to do the cars puzzle or the fruits and vegetables puzzle? I don't care, because we're going to do a puzzle right now, but the child thinks he has control. Give tons of attention. Social stories, social narratives, all of our little guys have a hard time with change. We send out to all of our preschoolers and all of our special needs campers social stories on the coronavirus, why they're not going to school, how they need to wash their hands. If you want them, feel free to email me. They are available all over the internet as well, but I have plenty that I can send to you. Modifying or accommodating those demands. If you have a child that can't sit for a 20-minute circle yet, it's okay for your whole class to do a 20-minute circle, and him do 10 minutes and then go to a different activity and start to work up towards the full 20 minutes. But every child doesn't need the same demands. You can modify how you're given those demands. Work, break, work, break. My schedule when I was a teacher always went, their first center was teacher time. Then they went to play. Then they went to independent work. Then they went to art sensory, but it was kind of an up, down schedule to keep them more engaged. Exercise breaks are an awesome way to prevent some of those negative behaviors. How we're going to change that environment. Everyone has that kid that needs to be the child that sits next to the teacher. So having that child be right next to you might be a way to change the environment. Or they might need to be at the back because they need frequent walk breaks. Maybe you want some quiet music in the background, or maybe that music is distraction and the room needs to be silent. And then having something to do during that wait time. If you have 5 kids at direct instruction at teacher time with you, and you're only working with 3 kids at that moment, you need something quiet and engaging for those 2 other kids to do. You should always have those engaging activities for kids. This was actually my classroom when I was a teacher. I'm a big fan of curtains. So it does 2 things. We teach our preschoolers that whenever the curtain is closed, you can't access what's behind it. Also, as a teacher, I wasn't always the most organized. So before a parent came in the room for drop-off, I could throw everything behind it, close the curtain, and no one knew I was a mess. But using those curtains to teach when the curtain is down, that area is off limits, is a great way to start to teach limits to kids.
John, somebody is asking if you can elaborate on the exercise breaks. Actually, it's
yes, we're actually in a few slides, we're going to have some exercise break visuals, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail then. So just stay with me for about 3 minutes. Setting up before the student arrives. This is a table task activity, but every child already had something out, so they could drop off their backpack, say goodbye to mom, and go right into an activity and start to eliminate some of that hard time saying goodbye in the morning. You want that predictability. You want the schedule to be pretty similar every day. Obviously, you're going to have Havdalah on Monday, Shabbat on Fridays. There's going to be some changes, but you want the schedule to be as consistent as possible. I'm a big fan of using timers. Make the timer the bad guy, not you. Please don't use your iPhone so that when the timer goes beep, beep, and a child's upset, they throw your iPhone across the room. I know your JCC is not going to replace your iPhone for you. Go to Target, go to Walmart, buy the $1 kitchen timer. When the timer says beep, beep, your favorite activity is all done. Now the timer's the bad guy, not you. Here's just an example of how you can have multiple kids on a timer at once. I like using calendars for this child. For winter break, they were home Monday through Friday, January 1st to 5th. They started school again on the 8th, but on the 18th was a teacher work day and they went to work with mom, and then school started again. It gives them that predictability. This is one of my favorite behavioral strategies, and I think everyone should be using it. It's a visual support for contingencies. It's raining, so I'm not going outside. I'm sure you guys have that kid that will ask 30 or 40 times why they're not going outside today. This way you can answer it verbally once and then point to the visuals. So here's just a classroom rules chart. We always state our rules in the positive. It's we walk in the classroom. What we don't say is we don't run. We raise our hand to talk is the positive rule. We don't say, we don't call out. You're always stating the rules in a positive. Here's a self-regulation strip. I think we really should be teaching all of our kids starting at 2 years old, those self-regulation skills. This one is a stop, take deep breath, count to 5, review your story, squeeze your hands, and join your friends. Early on, we have to actually go through these steps with our kids. Over time, they should become independent with it. You see a child start to get upset, you could say, go use your self-reg strip, whatever it is. They go through the steps and come back and join you when they're ready. I'm sure you guys use First Thin in your classroom. If you don't, please do. First eat your broccoli, then you get your ice cream. We all use this all the time, even if we don't know we're doing it. First we come to teacher time, then we get our favorite toy. I'm sure you guys have lawyers and future businessmen in your classroom who will say, I hear what you're saying about first do my work and then I get my toy. But how about you give me my toy and then I'll do my work? Never give in to that. It's always first what you want them to do, then what they want. And if you use a first then statement, that is a verbal contract. That is binding. If you say first do your work, then you get the toy car, if they finish their work, they better get their toy car. I once gave a kid first finish your work and then we'll go outside and play basketball. South Florida, it rains at 3:30 every day during the summer. He finished his work in the middle of a hurricane. We were playing basketball because I promised him. When you give that first then, you have to live up to the then part. If you don't have one of those fancy boards, which I'm happy to share with you, just write it down on a piece of paper. So we want to use those visual supports for boundaries, for schedules, for supplements to receptive language. People always laugh and tell me I'm crazy when they see this picture. This was a child we had who showed a lot of out-of-seat behavior. So we put some masking tape around his chair and taught him, if you want to get out of your chair, you have to raise your hand. If you're going to leave your tape area, you have to raise your hand and ask. We know that the child could just step over that tape at any point, but we directly taught him to get the reinforcement of leaving his seat, he has to raise his hand. Kind of like the curtains, this finish sign, it's off limits, we're all done. When the computer's ready to go, we lift it off and now we can use the computer. So here's an example of a visual schedule. Each kid's a little bit different. So we see on the far left, we have Zach. He needed concrete pictures of him doing the activity, and he could only handle one picture at a time. Every time he fished an activity, we move that blinder down one, he could see the next activity. Most of the kids have individual schedules, and a few kids have those horizontal center strips. Each kid's schedule can look different, or it can be a group schedule. This is just a check-off schedule for kids. This is a task strip. We don't just use it for behavior. A few more weeks, we're all going to need the task strips for how to use our hair. We open our gel, we squeeze on our hands, we rub our hands together, we put it in our hair, we comb our hair. It's for building independence. I'm a big fan, especially for my preschool teachers, have that hand wash and visual task strip up in the bathroom and by the sink. Here's just a leisure schedule for kids. You can play basketball, you can build with blocks, then you're going to read a book, and then you get time on the computer. It's structuring that free time for our kids. I don't know how many people use this. I love it. This is the vault or the parking lot. When I was a teacher, I had all my paraprofessionals and myself. We put our cell phones in the parking lot. It made me very popular with my staff, obviously, and they could only access it during breaks. For kids, put what they're working for, put their favorite item in the vault. That way they can see it, they know it's there, no one else is touching it, but the only way you can unlock that vault is by earning all 5 of your tokens, or by finishing your work, or by keeping your hands to yourself. That magically opens the vault, and then you get the reinforcer. Our simple visuals for lining up, or for where to sit, having that structure. I don't know how many of you guys use visual cueing belts. I'm sure most of you don't. I think there's the negative connotation that this is only for children with special needs. I love using them for everybody. If you want a child to sit down, you can say sit down and pair it with the picture. So for our 2-year-olds who are still learning to process language, they have the picture to go on as well. Please give choices. I'm on break. I can color, I can use my sensory box, I can look at books, I can finger paint, I can use my pop toy. These are my choices to build independence. Or it might need to be the real picture. I don't know if you guys are using behavioral momentum or if you even know what it's called, but you're using it without knowing you're using it. Behavioral momentum is a system where you use things a child is good at and prefers to get them to do something that's hard for them and they don't like. So if you have a child who is like the greatest Simon Says player ever, but they have a hard time with letter sounds, you might go, Simon Says, clap your hands. Awesome, clapping your hands, high five. Simon Says, stomp your feet. That was beautiful, stomping your feet, high five. Steinman says, touch your stomach. That was amazing, touching your stomach, fist bump it. What letter sound is this? Or what sound does the A make? They're more likely to comply with that letter sound question because they're already accessing reinforcement on the gross motor imitation. You're using stuff they're good at to build that momentum. And now they're like a snowball going downhill. And now they're more likely to listen to that harder demand. It's a great strategy to use with all kids. Make stuff fun. You have a kid who's struggling with money skills, but he loves Spider-Man. Spider-Man uses money. I don't know where he puts the money in his outfit, but I'm sure he buys stuff. Make it fun. Individualize it for our kids. Again, have those samples. Have it structured. Here's the visual layout for what the child's going to do at art. For preschool, I love response cards. A lot of teachers use it for like second grade and above, and they forget about it in preschool. If you're at morning meeting and you have 18 kids in your room, and you say, what day is today? And one kid says Monday. And then you say, what day was yesterday? And a second kid says Sunday. And you say, and tomorrow will be, and the third kid says Tuesday. 3 of those 18 kids got to work on their days of the week that day. Response cards, you could say, what day is today? And every kid can clip Monday on their response card, hold it up, and now you're gauging if all 18 kids are getting days of the week or not. You can have a yes, no. Is today Monday? And they can say yes or no. But now every kid is answering every question. You're increasing engagement and participation, and you're monitoring who's getting it and who's not getting it more often. Allow activities in the environment to address a need. If you have a child with a lot of sensory needs, maybe a rocking chair helps them. If you have a child who has those oral motor needs and they're biting, maybe Chewy or chewing gum or something like that can help them stop with that biting erasers, biting their hands, biting their fingernails. If you are going to use a chewy type item, old school was those like giant letter P's or Q's that kids wore around their necks. No more. Chewy is an awesome thing now for kids who have that oral sensation in your room. For the boys, the Chewy looks like a little dog tag, but the metal part is actually rubber. They can put it right in their mouth. For the girls or boys, I guess I hate to stereotype, it's a Pandora looking bracelet and the charms are rubber instead of metal. And when they need that oral input, they can chew on their bracelet for a minute and then go back to their work. It's looking a lot more socially appropriate than that old school strategy. Maybe some fidgets. I need to update this slide to include some fidget spinners and some newer fidget toys. But a child who can sit and participate if you give them something to keep their hands busy is a lot better than a child who's running out of your circle time because they need that movement. I'm a big fan of that check-in, check-out system. It's called hugs for a lot of people. If you have a child with some challenging behaviors and they have a preferred staff member, it's a quick 1-minute hugs. You say hello to that preferred staff member, you update them on how your day is going so far, and then you say goodbye and go back to your activity. That hugs is an awesome way to start to teach kids that check-in, check-out self-regulation system. Or a point chart. Am I getting a smiley face from, 8 to 9? Am I getting my 5 smiley faces? Am I getting 3 out of 5 smiley faces? How's it going? So here, for the person who asked about exercise, I always had an exercise area in my classrooms. And I had it during circle time, and I had it before each activity that required sitting. And a child could go up and say, we're going to do side bends today. And the next child said, we're going to do 10 side bends. Or we're going to do wall push-ups, and I'm going to pick 15 of them, and the whole class does it. I incorporated it throughout my day before circle time, before story time, before centers, and my exercise corner. If I saw a kid was starting to really get amped up, I could redirect them to the go to your exercise corner and do 2 exercises is a cool down strategy. How you structure your tasks for our older kids, your to-do on the left and your finished on the right. For our preschool kids, it could just be 3 bins in front of them and they go left to right until they finish everything. I guess I'm not gonna be able to see your responses. I'm sure some people here have used social stories before, social narratives. I'm a big fan of social stories. Some staying calm when I'm excited. Sometimes when I go in activity, I get really excited. When I get excited, I sometimes get too excited and make a lot of noises. If I get too excited, I might hurt someone and other kids might get scared of me. I can stay calm and in control of myself. I can take deep breaths, count to 10, and squeeze my hands together so I can stay calm. When I'm calm, kids are going to want to play with me. So it goes over what the activity is, what the expectations are, what they can do if they start to feel that way, and then what the payoff for doing the right thing is. Big fan. Here we go. I come to school in a car with my mom. Most days my teacher meets me in the hallway and walks to my class. Sometimes she's absent or doesn't see me in the hallway. I might get upset if I don't see my teacher in the morning. I will stay calm when my teacher's not with me. If I get upset, I'll take a break or ask for deep breaths. My teacher will be so proud of me if I stay calm. What's not a social story? It's time to go outside for recess. Bobby can go down the slide. Bobby doesn't touch the tree. Social narratives and stories are always first person from the child's perspective and saying what the child can do. We want to teach those replacement skills. That's an old school Big Mac for those of you who've been in the field for a long time. Are we going to teach functional communication? For a child who needs to escape, is showing those negative behaviors for escape, can we teach them to ask for a break? Can we teach them to ask for help? So again, for escape, we can teach them to request a break. We can teach them to request help. We can teach them to say no, to say all done. If it's to obtain attention, we teach them to request attention. If it's to obtain an object or activity, we can teach them to ask for a turn, ask for an item, and teach them how to wait for that item. If it's sensory seeking, we need to find what they're getting out of it. Sensory behaviors are very tricky. Let's go with spitting because that's such a fun sensory seeking behavior. But what is the sensory from spitting? Is it the calling it up in your throat? Is it the playing with saliva in your mouth? Is it the actual action of spitting? Is it going Big Daddy style and sucking it back in before it touches the ground? Or is it the spitting on a table and then playing with it? Your replacement strategy is going to match what the sensory input they're getting from it is. If it's the playing with it on the table, maybe they can play with soap and water or clear gelatin. If it's the actual action of spitting it, maybe they can work on, blowing bubbles. But we need to replace the actual feeling they're getting out of it. So again, if they're doing it to escape, we're going to teach them to request, I need a break, and they're going to get out of work. If they're doing it for attention, we're going to teach them to say, play with me, and they're going to get attention. If they're doing it to gain an item, we're going to teach them to say, I want the item, and they're going to get the item. But why what we teach and what we do needs to meet the function. I'm sure when you were in school, it was a lot like when I was in school. If it was time to take a spelling test and you weren't prepared for the spelling test, so you started acting up, your teacher would send you to the principal's office and they think they're punishing you. But what you wanted to do was escape that spelling test. And now you're in the principal's office not taking the test. You won. You got what you wanted. You're more likely to do it again in the future. What we teach and how we respond needs to match why they're doing what they're doing. Here's just a visual for requesting a break. When I get upset, I can take a break. I can say I need a break. After a break, I'm ready to try again. Here's a little point board for our 2-year-olds or kids who are struggling to communicate. If they want access to items, this is a way that they can request items when they don't have the words for it. I know we're almost running out of time, so I'm trying to jump a little bit. Here again, that same self-regulation strategy. Stop, take a deep breath, breathe out, count to 10, squeeze our hands and stretch. Take a deep breath, get a drink, stretch, do a wall push-up, take a walk. We can use some of that conscious discipline, square breathing. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds. We all have self-regulation, cool down strategies. We need to teach our kids these same strategies. Here's a 5-point scale. 1 is I'm rocking it. 2 is I'm a little upset. 3 is I'm getting upset. 4 is I'm really getting upset. And 5 is I'm losing it. And we teach our kids to identify how they're feeling and what choices they should make in that situation. You know, we showed that contingency map earlier of it's raining outside, so I can't go outside. I also love contingency maps for behavior. This is Matthew. Matthew has 2 choices. He can do his work or he can choose not to do his work. If Matthew does his work, he gets a token. If Matthew doesn't do his work, he doesn't get a token. So when Matthew doesn't earn a token and he gets upset, you're not the bad guy. Matthew, did you do your work? No, then you knew you weren't going to get a token. Same thing here. I'm working with my teacher. I can raise my hand, ask for a break, and I can get a break, or I can elope. I didn't ask for a break and I don't get my beanbag chair. It's up to you, dude. You do the right thing, you're going to get the good thing. You don't do the right thing, you're not going to get it. So reinforcement, it's something that people like that makes them increase the appropriate behaviors. It can be intentional or unintentional, and praise might not always be a reinforcer. You might have to pair it with something else until it becomes reinforcing. And when you are using social praise, which is what we should be using the most of as a reinforcer, it can't just be good job. It needs to be really motivational, enthusiastic. I love the way that you, and it needs to be specific. I love the way that you clapped your hands, high five, that was so amazing. You want to be very specific and you want to make the reinforcement fun. Why do we use reinforcement instead of punishment? Reinforcement teaches appropriate behavior. Punishment only teaches people what not to do. Reinforcement helps people feel good about themselves. It builds positive relationships and it builds new skills. Punishment might actually cause more negative behaviors. They might avoid you, cry, run away from you, and have negative self-esteem. So we want to reinforce that positive behavior that we see. We want to reinforce it during the appropriate time. You have 1 to 3 seconds to reinforce a behavior. If you don't reinforce it in that 1 to 3 seconds, it's gone. Too much stuff has happened in between the behavior and the reinforcement. I love token systems. It might look like a sticker chart. Individuals earn tokens or stickers for following the rules. Each person has their own board. They make progress at their own rate. How many tokens a kid needs to earn before they get that reinforcer might be individualized. Our kids with a lot of challenging behaviors might only need to earn 5 tokens before they get that payoff. Our kids who are rocking it might need 15 or 20 before they get it, but they're all working towards something. So here's a portable token system. You can take that with you for a child. When he earns 7 thumbs up, he gets Skittles. I'm not a big fan of using edible reinforcement unless it's absolutely the only thing that's going to work. Here's more individualized. The princess is working for and she has to earn 10. The conductor is working for and he has to earn 10. Instead of using thumbs up, you can make the tokens princesses, trains, cars. I have a kid who loves baseball right now, and he's a big, Aaron Judge for the Yankees fan. So he has a baseball field token board, and every time he does the right thing, Aaron Judge moves from home plate to first base. The next time he follows the rules, Aaron Judge goes to second base. When he does something again, he goes to third base. And then when he does the last thing right, he scores a run, and that gets him his reinforcer. It's very individualized.
John, somebody asked if you think that token systems are something that work with all children.
They are. The way it's going to look is going to be different, but every child can work towards a token system. And I hear a lot of, I shouldn't have to reinforce behavior. They should do it because it's the right thing to do. Why am I bribing them with tokens to do the right thing? For our kids, token is like money to us. Is your boss bribing you to show up to work every day with your paycheck? Or is that your payoff for doing the right thing and coming to work? For our kids, it's the same thing. So this room had a class store. For 1 token, they could buy bracelets and lollipops. And for 4 tokens, it was bubbles, bubble gum, other cool stuff. And for 8, they could get goldfish and buses. And for 10, they got breaks, they got animals, all sorts of cool stuff. And every kid, no matter what they earned, could buy something. The better you behave, the more you could buy. And if you don't want to use an individual token board, you can have a group token board. Something I'm using at one of our campuses right now, and Mark, please help me out here because Hebrew school was a long time ago for me. So every room has a tzedakah box. Is that right?
That's correct.
Charity box? Yes?
Yes.
Awesome. So every room has a tzedakah box. And every time a child is doing the right thing in the room, the teacher puts a pretend play coin in the tzedakah box. And that's their token system. And when the tzedakah box is full, what they picked to work for was writing letters to Israeli soldiers. So when they fill that box, their payoff is writing a letter to Israeli soldiers. So that's a token system that's class-wide, that's more in line with the Reggio, more naturalistic teaching, not using big-time reinforcers, but is taking that same concept and making it very JCC friendly, if that makes sense.
So John, I have a couple of questions and then we're just about out of time, but
Yep.
The questions are all about, some people are talking about how they're not allowed to use stickers or tokens. Others ask, what do you say to children, other children, when they ask, why does she get that and I don't get that?
So when it comes to, and are we at the stopping point where I should stop the presentation and start showing myself on camera again?
They can see who you are.
All right, 1 second, guys. All right, hi everybody. So let's start with, I'm at a school that doesn't allow reinforcement or doesn't allow token systems. Is that more in line with what was said? Not allowed to use stickers or tokens.
Yeah.
So one of our preschools works on that. So we have two different preschools in Palm Beach. One of our preschools is very open to sticker charts, more traditional reinforcement systems, and one is a absolutely not. And at the preschool where we don't use those types of systems, that's where we came with the tzedakah box, where it's the same concept. Every time you do the right thing, it's kind of like a marble jar. We're putting a token in, but it's matching up to those Jewish values. And then instead of working for toys or a pizza party or something that is that more contrived reinforcer, they're working towards an activity that they really want, but that matches the values of the organization. So, and I'm going to mispronounce your name, I apologize. Salika, do you think your school would allow something like that tzedakah box where they're working towards a charitable activity? It's going to be the same thing as a token board, but it looks a lot more appropriate than a token board, if that makes sense. Do we think that's something that your school would be open to? We'll come back. And then how do you respond to children asking, why does she get that and I don't? I'll send to you guys, I have to get it off of my actual work computer, which is going to take a little bit of time. We have a couple stories that we use to teach, because your preschoolers are going to go to kindergarten where kids are going to have IEPs in their classrooms, and they're going to start having those systems in place where one kid is on an FBA with a token board and the rest of the class isn't, and they're going to have to be okay with it. And we're starting to teach our preschoolers how fair isn't equal and equal isn't fair, and starting to teach how some kids have different needs. And it's been really successful for our 2 preschools so far.
Thank you. John.
And then someone asked about the self-management visuals. Lisa, shoot me an email and I'll send you anything that you want. And I'm going to type I think Mark already did, but I'll type my email in here as well.
Right, and I'm going to, first of all, I know that, Jesse, are you on there? I know that your name is, but I don't know if you're hearing us or if you're in the room, because if you are and you'd like to say something, just stick a note in the chat and I can unmute you, or I can just unmute you anyway, although I shouldn't do that unless I know you know I am. So let me know if you're there. And I want to talk to the rest of you first, and then I'll thank John, which is, okay, he is here. So I'm going to let Jesse say a few words before we move to the end here. You should be able to talk, Jesse, and if there's a real image of you, I can find you and we can see.
There is.
So if you start talking.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Rosen. I'm proud to be the president and CEO of the Mandel JCC here in Palm Beach, Florida, and wanted to just take maybe 30 or 40 seconds to just draw a line for all of us between the work that JCC Association does, the work that we all do in the field, and how John Kabot is here. When the world started to turn upside down, we were getting a lot of great resources from other JCCs, and I'm proud that one of the strongest things we bring to the table, I believe, is John Kabot and what we're doing with our special needs program here. We reached out to Mark Horowitz to say, hey, if we can be helpful in this, and I just really want to illustrate JCC Association doing what they really do well in convening groups of experts around a table or a virtual table to share information. I think is what makes us stronger. And here at the Mandel JCC in the Palm Beaches down in Florida, we're honored to be a part of it, and hope that you all agree with me that not only is John Kabot, who seems to have oranges growing out of his head, judging by what Katie lets him sit in front of, but just really an expert in the field, and we all have stolen from experts at your JCCs, and I just want to not let that go past without acknowledging JCCA and the work of the field. So I hope everybody is hanging in there as well as we can, and thanks for all the amazing work all of you do.
So I want to just say a couple of things. First of all, in regard to what Jesse just said, Jesse and John and Jesse and a number of our executive directors are really important partners in the work that we do. And without them, there is no work that we do, because what we do best is, as he said, is highlight the remarkable work happening all over the continent. And John is one of our most remarkable professionals. And having just found him not so long ago, we're so grateful that he and Jesse have been so gracious to be with us. So I want to tell you how to find this information. And I want you all to stop for just a moment posting so you can see the important email I'm about to send, which is already up there. So I'm just posting in an email for Cherise Smith. Cherise, if you start talking, then I think that they will see you. Oh, you can't because you're not unmuted, probably. Give me a second, everybody. I want you to get to meet. Okay, Cherise, you should be able to talk.
Hi, hello, everybody. My name is Cherise Smith. I am the program associate here with the Sheva Center. And I will put my email in the chat box and send you guys all of the presentation materials. So yeah, if you would like those materials, you can reach out to me via email, and I'm happy to send these things along to you.
And then the things that John sends to us that he wants to send to you will come to you. So it won't happen this afternoon. It will happen as soon as I get whatever I need from John, and then we'll send it to all of you. And you please send a note to Cherise, and it's down there at the bottom, c.smith@jcca.org. And I want to just say thank you to Jonathan, who I'm going to let you see now, because this was a remarkable presentation. We're very grateful. We will have other presentations with Jonathan, so you should look for them in the things that we sent out to you and wherever you heard about coming to see Jonathan, and know that we also have many other programs. We have a program tonight and tomorrow night and Tuesday. If you want that information, you can write to Cherise this afternoon. We have the fabulous Dr. G tonight, Debbie Gilboa, who's doing a presentation at 9 o'clock for those of you in Eastern time. It's really for families, which is why, and anybody is welcome, but it's for families. And we are not going to be talking at all. She is going to be talking about parenting during social distancing and how to navigate this new world. We've already got about 170 people coming tonight. We have another one tomorrow night, which isn't quite as full, and that one's at 11 o'clock Eastern time, meant for the West Coast. And then we have one on Tuesday, which is, I think it's at 8 o'clock for Mountain Time. We'll have to send you that information, unless Cherise chimes in. Thank you, Jonathan, one more time. We're really grateful for you all. And let you have
Thank you.
word.
And I will send you the presentation. I saw a few people who asked for visuals. Just email me directly and I'll share with you anything that you're looking for. It will be too challenging to email Mark the entire visual library that we have.
Right, and please do, if you want Jonathan's PowerPoint, please write to Cherise. We don't want Jonathan to have to, on top of all the wonderful things he's done for us, to have to write each of you back. That's our job. So c.smith@jcca.org. Thank you all for being here. We're really very grateful. And Jonathan, one more time, thanks so much.